Hello and welcome to episode 952 of the official EstablishTheRun.com podcast. My name is Adam Levitan. I am one of the co-founders here at ETR, and we're coming off of the regular season is over kind of week. Yes, that's right. After 18 weeks of battling, sweating, tilting, analyzing, overanalyzing, the results are in. Good news is I did well in DFS cash this season. Ended up with a 62% win rate in head-to-heads, 11.6% ROI. That 11.6% is my fourth best ROI in head-to-head ever. Best since the 2019-20 season when I was at 18.7%. Best season I ever had was 2018 season, 22.1%. But yeah, I mean, given how much sharper the field has gotten over the last, 2, 3, 5 years, I'm pretty happy with 11.6%. If you told me back in August that's what I would return this season in cash, I'd hug you just out of relief more than joy, just relief. But given the way the season started, I mean, I was absolutely smashing for the first 12 weeks or so, was on pace to have my best season ever, then got buried for the final 5 weeks. So that was a little frustrating. But yeah, still 11.6%, certainly will take it. I'm not really sure on takeaways in terms of those results. Our projections, and you can go back and listen to a solo pod I did in the midst of the Sun run. I talked about this for a while, but our projections were the best they've ever been. There's always an element of I was running hot for the first 12-week stretch. Definitely ran poorly for the last 5 weeks. Overall result is probably something around expectation. I will say, though, I'm just not sure how seriously I'm going to play cash next season, which pains me to say, honestly, because that was my 10th straight year playing cash seriously. And I do think it's my best way to make money in DFS. But just two things kind of eating at me a little bit in terms of maybe changing it up. The first thing is just the amount of good action I can get. I used to post in the head-to-head lobby, and everything would get taken by all kinds of people, pros, casuals, whales, whatever, and high stakes stuff, 215s, 530s, 1Ks, 2Ks. I would just get a ton of action. And now I just don't as much. My volume was way down this season, which is fine. But obviously, when I'm spending a ton of time and mind space and effort on it, I want to have as much action as possible. And the second thing that's kind of been eating at me about cash is like things are so tight these days. I often find myself wanting to IKB the math or try to play something off the board. But I feel like I can't because people, and maybe rightfully, people say, oh, but Adam, you didn't play the ETR optimal, or Adam, the guy you played was sixth in top plays or not in top plays at all. And I get that. But at the same time, not being able to really IKB, I know better for anyone who doesn't know. I don't know. It's not a big deal, but it just feels like kind of trapping at times, if that makes sense. So I don't know. We'll see. I'm sure I'll play cash early next season. I'm not sure I'll commit to playing the whole year again. All right. Now for the bad news on results. This was the most horrific tournament year possible for me. Honestly, didn't think it was even like in the range of outcomes to not have a real sweat, even a real glimmer of hope for winning something the whole season. I lost 39% in main slate NFL DFS tournaments this season, just incredibly tilting. It was definitely a weird year in tournaments. Hashtag team play the best plays was smashing so hard for the first half of the season, maybe in the first like 75% of the season. I mean, my cash team was in position to win tournaments so often. I legit think for the first 12 weeks, my highest scoring team of the week overall, including all my GPP teams, it was my cash team. Like so often, maybe like 10 out of those first 12 weeks. I mean, just insane stuff. And during that time, I was trying really hard to play the best plays in tournaments, just couldn't get the right combos. Had some good finishes in the teens or the 20s or the 30s, but never got a real sweat. And then down the stretch, I was probably playing too chalky and was kind of dead there also. So that was frustrating. I think my best format, my favorite format for tournaments is the small field, like 80 to 300 people, single entry. There are some cash elements to that kind of format, but also can KB stuff and take leverage points where you think chalk might be weak and really profit and try to benefit from correlation and stuff like that. So maybe I'll do something with that next year. We'll see. But just is what it is on tournaments. I mean, my lifetime ROI in DFS tournaments is still plus 40%. I've had a couple really big scores, including the 250K score. And that's why using results to track tournaments can be confusing. Do I think my expectation in NFL main slate GPPs is 40%? No, of course not. Do I think my expectation is to lose 40% like I did this year? Of course not also. You know, when all the money is up top, you have to get first place. You have to get second or third. You know, the variance is just out of control when all the money is up top. And so, you know, instead of thinking about it in terms of raw profit, there's other ways to think about evaluating tournament results. If you upload your results to the Solver bankroll tracker, shout out to us, that's free, by the way, you can see how often your teams are finishing in the top 1% of the tournament, top 1% of the field. My GPP teams this NFL season finished in the top 1%, 1.7% of the time. It's not spectacular, but it's decent. You know, it probably means I deserved a little bit better than minus 39% on the year. But again, you got to get first, you know, finishing 35th or 15th or 16th. It's just not going to do it. One thing I did notice when looking at my data, did win 85% in showdown GPPs. Didn't play high stakes, didn't take it too seriously, but maybe there's something there, you know, or maybe it's just small sample and I won 85% just randomly. But showdown, I think, is one place where sims really did and do help. It's just hard for the human brain to get our heads around showdown, a game where the goal is to do like the wildest yet still possible stuff. In other words, trying to find true tail outcomes that happen more often than the field is going to play it. So I'm going to go back and think about showdown and playing showdown tournaments more seriously, maybe. Anyway, that's it on DFS results for the year. Again, the DFS bankroll tracker on Solver is free. You can check that out if you want to go over your own results from this season. Once you get to listener questions, just a few housekeeping things first. Our NFL in-season product does run through the Super Bowl. That means projections, establish a show, establish the million. Monthly and weekly options are available on that. Again, runs through the Super Bowl. As for free content, this is the final solo pod of the season, but team by team will continue. Also, stay tuned for some fun shows on the free side, YouTube side, like Man vs. Machine recap, interview with the best ball winners, including Sam Sherman, and more. If interested in non-NFL DFS, golf season starts next week. Absolutely love our team there. Such a fun game to play. Check that out. And of course, NBA is in full swing. Head to establishtherun.com for details on the golf and NBA DFS products. All right, enough is enough. It is time for everyone's favorite portion of the program, listener questions. Question 1 from Jim Bell. He says, if these rigged gambling stories ever somehow led to a complete shutdown of sports betting / DFS all over the United States, what would you do for a living? So I've gotten a bunch of questions about the future of player props in our country. Things like, it obviously affects us a lot. We're focused really hard on things like how many catches for Justin Jefferson Sunday, or who will lead the Bengals-Browns game in receiving yards. My take is that player props are not going anywhere. The main reason all these states are legalizing sports betting is for the revenue. You know, the states are busto. Everyone is betting anyways. We should just legalize it and then tax the ever-living fuck out of it. Not only tax the operators as much as 50% or more on profits, but also tax the hell out of any winners. And basically get away with it because of this whole vice tax concept. Cigarettes are terrible for you. If people want to smoke them, let's charge $20 a pack in taxes. And that they're trying to apply that to gambling at the state level also, and kind of at the personal level now too, which I can talk about another time. But anyway, my point is that states are not in the business of removing revenue from their coffers, from their budget. And a huge portion of that revenue, probably way more than anyone, including myself, predicted, a huge portion of that revenue that sportsbooks are giving to the states comes from player props, especially SGPs. So when questions like this come up, oh, everything's rigged, we have to get rid of player props. Yeah, it's cool and all to think about what's right and maybe what we should do or what politicians should do. But all that really matters is money. So, no, I am not worried about most player props. I say most because I could see some regulation getting through on some other aspects of props. Like, let's take Jonte Porter, for example. Who is betting on rebounds plus assists line or the steals line for the ninth man on the Raptors who's on a two-way contract? I'll tell you who's not betting on that. It's not the drunk guy hammered on his toilet, taking a shit and firing losers. It's not any casual recreational bro. The people betting Jonte Porter, the people betting ninth man on the Raptors stuff is people like us. Not because it's rigged, but because that's the stuff where we find the biggest edges. And so if regulators came to DraftKings or FanDuel or whoever else and said, hey, look, we're going to ban all props on, say, NBA bench players or wide receivers with a line below 15 yards. Maybe DraftKings and FanDuel wouldn't fight it. I don't know, because the only action they're getting on this stuff anyways is from sharps. And that would suck. You know, that would suck if they banned that. But I wouldn't really stress it. We will still find plenty of plus EV things to bet, I think. But yeah, you know, Jim asked what I would do in this never going to happen, but hypothetical scenario where all forms of player level gambling got shut down. The easy answer, Jim, is just gamble on stocks or real estate or watches or women's bags or whatever. You know, almost everything in life is some form of gambling. That's easy. But I think more likely I'd be interested in just trying something else and something in like health and longevity. Every time I talk about all the stuff I've been doing on that health and longevity front, I get so many messages from people like genuinely wanting to know more so they can live healthier, happier, longer lives. That's pretty rewarding and I think, you know, a net positive for society in a big way. So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe establish the health gym. I don't know. Question 2 from Dan. He says, Adam, you construct what you feel is a great DFS lineup, but have some money left over. You see what you can change, but like everything the way that it is. How much is too much to leave on the table in your opinion, or are you zeroing out every single lineup? Yeah, Dan, really depends on the slate and game format. In cash, I think the most I've ever left on the table is 400. In GPPs, in full slates, I'd probably leave 500 on the table at most, typically less. But on small slates, for example, we're going to have a ton of 2 gamers and 3 gamers and showdowns and 4 gamers during the playoffs. I'm willing to leave a lot of money on the table in tournament lineups on those kind of slates. In fact, a lot of times on the 2 gamers or showdown, I'm actually actively trying to leave a lot of money on the table because it's simply less likely that I get duped. You know, as an example, let's say it's a 2-game slate. A lineup that hits the full 50K salary has Tet McMillan in it. You can leave 2K on the table by playing Jalen Coker over Tet. If I was playing large field GPPs on a 2-game slate, stuff like that would undoubtedly be in play for me. Undoubtedly. So, yeah, hope that makes sense, Dan. Question 3 from Greg Andrews Burner. He says, as an early 40s guy, how am I supposed to dress? It's either I look like the dude or Peter Millar. Yeah, I mean, you know, we've hit rock bottom as a society when people are asking me how to dress. My wardrobe as a 43-year-old man, and I use that term loosely, is effectively the same as it was in high school. Just mesh shorts and long sleeve t-shirts. As I've gotten older, though, I guess I do have some desire or more of a desire to look presentable. Like, I really don't care about cars or watches or clothes or whatever else a ton of people, you know, care about. But I do think wearing clothes that actually fit you well, aren't wrinkled, like fit the situation, I mean, you can get that done pretty easily with the help of one woman and one trip to the Banana Republic outlet store. Easy game. I will say there was a guy back in like 2003, 2004 poker. He would always wear a suit when he played. Always. Not Tony Dunst, but similar to the Tony Dunst thing. And one time I was at Borgata and I approached him in my, disgusting sweatpants and Boca Juniors warm-up jacket and asked him, I was like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? Why are you wearing a suit every day? And he just looked at me, took one breath and said, look good, feel good, play good. And I do think there's something to be said for that, for some people. Not really for me, but I do think that some people perform better when they are confident in the way they look. I think for me, I just hate the way I look at all times. No clothes can save me. So I mostly gave up a long time ago. Question 4 from Gilly Gilly. Is there a type of bet you lean toward more heavily? Season long, same game parlays, DFS, unders versus overs? Yeah, I think regular listeners understand I only really play peer-to-peer games like poker or DFS. Maybe that will change with these exchanges, which in theory are peer-to-peer. But I think what people don't really understand about exchanges is that the peer you're betting against in a lot of these scenarios are way sharper than sports books. We're talking Susquehanna or Rufus or maybe us one day or maybe some other very sharp person that's actually originating their own numbers. But anyways, Gilly Gilly, trying to answer your question directly, in terms of fantasy football, I think season-long fantasy is by far the softest. Like anyone listening to this podcast, grinding hard, subscribes to ETR, my guess is you're very plus EV in almost any season-long league. In terms of betting on books, I honestly wouldn't do it casually if you're in it for more than mere entertainment. But if you don't really know what you're doing, I'd probably just find some unders in player props you like each week. The props market has changed a ton. It used to be you could blindly bet every under and make a decent ROI. These days, the books have adjusted a lot, and overs can definitely be good bets. But if you're a more casual, can't originate your own numbers, or maybe you have our full stat sub, but you're trying to find more stuff, just bet unders and you'll be okay. You might still lose, but you'll lose less than if you're just firing overs, I think. Number 5 from Wene, he says, who is worse, the I can't catch any cards poker guy or the my lineup is always injured fantasy football guy? Now, look, Winnie, in a different world, in a perfect world, I would never whine. It's really a weak-minded, pathetic, loser thing to do. And I try really, really, really hard not to for a lot of reasons. But I'd be lying if I said I don't whine about running bad in whatever spot all the time. I just can't help it. So one thing I try to tell myself to get myself to stop is I am not entitled to win. Why are you whining? You got in as a 75-25 favorite and lost. That shit happens all the fucking time. In fact, 1 out of 4 times. Getting it in good does not mean you will win today, this week, this month, maybe even this year. And the other thing, the obvious thing, hopefully, is that this all evens out in the end. Over the course of my lifetime, I will get dealt aces the same amount as everyone else. The players we project for 15 points in DFS, they'll score 35 for me just as often as they do for my opponents on an infinite sample. When I get it in as a 75% favorite, I'll win 75% of the time and lose 25% of the time, just like everyone else over the infinite sample. I hope that's obvious. But one thing that's true on this, and one that does actually really make me whine, is running bad in big spots. In other words, let's say you're at the final table of the World Series of Poker, 9 people left. You lose kings versus queens. That's clearly way worse than losing that on day one. I would just, if that happened to me at the final table, I just wouldn't be able to go on. It would be too much to handle. And like things happen like that in fantasy football all the time. I was in some very, very high stakes best ball head-to-head type format. Get to the final and take a bad beat in the final is just so brutal compared to it happening in week 1. So of course I want to run hot when all the chips are down and run cold when there's not much money in the pot, obviously. And maybe that doesn't even out as easily because the sample is smaller. But still, if you play enough, it will even out. But anyway, no one, just going back to the whining thing in general, like no one wants to hear from the victim mentality about anything in life. No one cares. Try harder, do better, no excuses, play like a champion, whatever stupid saying you want. And that's what I strive for, even if I still do, catch myself whining all the time. Question 6 from Ryan. He says, CLV, closing line value, as a measure of success when the market is inefficient. Sklansky dollars are easy to calculate in the poker room when probabilities are known. In my bros chat group, one day CLV is the measure of success, and the next we're smashing closing lines because I know better. Which is it? Yeah, I get what you're saying, Ryan. You're unwilling to assume that sports betting markets are efficient at close. I think that's fair for a lot of sports, for things like NFL or NBA. I think it's pretty efficient. Not perfectly efficient, but pretty efficient at close. And so the CLV debate is complicated, but I think if you take that stance for 95% or more of the people listening to this, if you are betting sports, you should be betting early and trying to get CLV and tracking / recording if you get CLV and how much you got. And I'd probably just stop the CLV debate there. Books are going to close closer to the most efficient line, not a perfectly efficient line, but the most efficient line. If you beat that line consistently, you're probably getting it in good. The problem is that sports betting is fucking stupid, because if you get CLV consistently, that is one of the number one red flags. They'll just limit and ban your account. So then you get into the whole accounts game and priming accounts game. Just ridiculous. Maybe the whole exchange or prediction market stuff helps there, but I don't know. I will say, I would just note, like, for the best of the best of the best in sports betting, like the top 0.0001%, you're actually trying not to get CLV. You're trying to bet as late as possible. You're not trying to get CLV because it costs you accounts. And if you bet a lot, like 5 or 6 or 7 figures, you're going to move the line and create self-fulfilling CLV, which obviously means nothing, on a much smaller scale. But if I go blast Dak Prescott under 250 passing yards or as much as I possibly can, am I going to move the line? Yes. Does that mean I'm getting good CLV? Well, by the literal definition, yeah, the line moved towards me, but it's because of me. It's a relatively shallow market that I'm blasting. Anyway, I don't want to go too deep on this. There's people far more qualified than me to talk sports betting. I think for the semi-sharp or serious person, simply trying to get CLV and see if you can over a big sample, that's a good goal. All right, question 7, last question we're going to do this season comes from Michael Scott. He says, is it true that in the heat of the moment, it is sometimes acceptable to go ass to mouth? You know what, Michael? I think that's just a good spot to end the solo pod for the 2025 NFL season. I just can't do it anymore. All right. I know I say this every year. For me personally, it's a really weird thing. This niche that we're in, I'm not talking about fantasy football generally. I'm talking about thinking about football and predicting about it in this very specific way that we think about it. I'm talking about like a deranged sense of humor. I'm talking about jokes and takes that only a very small subset of people would connect with. Like when I go out in the wild, the chances of someone connecting with me is like 1 in a million. But here on this show, it's just so fun to know that you guys get what I'm saying. So thank you for indulging me here. I love doing the solo pod. Hope you guys got some laughs along the way. I will save the official send-off for the season for something when we wrap up team by team closer to the Super Bowl, but definitely shout out to everyone on our team. 18 weeks of grinding this stuff seems really simple and easy and fun. Our team puts in just an insane amount of work and dedication. So can't thank them enough for our best season ever in terms of projections and I think content as well. All right. Next show will be team by team with Silva on Tuesday, covering playoff teams only. Also coming up, interview with Sam Sherman, our former colleague who won $2 million in the underdog best ball. Also interviewing Samuel, who won the DraftKings Best Ball for $2 million as well. Stay tuned for all of that. For everyone here at ETR, producer Luke, producer Ryan, Jerry, the most beautiful beast in the world, I'm Adam. Good luck, everybody.